Last week, the star witness in Donald Trump's hush money trial was the porn star Stormy Daniels. Well, today it's all eyes on Trump's former lawyer and personal fixer, Michael Cohen, who's been taking the stand. He is regarded as being the most important witness in this case, and his testimony could shape the outcome of the first criminal case against a former US president. That's because he had intimate first-hand knowledge of Trump's activities. Well, Trump faces 34 charges of falsifying his business records. Well, here's what Donald Trump said about Cohen as he entered the courtroom earlier on.
Got no evidence, and I'm innocent. This is a political witch hunt, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I tell you what, the appellate division and the judges should step in, because what this judge is getting away with is disgraceful.
Trump speaking there outside the courthouse. Well, I'm here in the studio with Monte Francis from the France 24 News desk. Hi there, Monte.
Hi, Tom.
Before we get into what he had to say on the witness stand, just tell us first why Michael Cohen is such a key figure in the prosecution's case, but also, fair to say, problematic as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, Michael Cohen is essential for the prosecution because he directly connects Donald Trump to this alleged scheme. You know, Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney and fixer, he worked for Trump for 10 years. He once said that he would take a bullet for Trump. That has since changed. Feelings on both sides have changed, we should say. They're pretty much sworn enemies, these two men now. Now, Cohen is the person who paid Stormy Daniels that $130,000 for her to keep quiet about this alleged affair she said she had with Trump. That payment was made in the run-up to the 2016 election. Now, Cohen paid Daniels with his own personal money, and then Trump repaid him. Prosecutors say that Trump mischaracterized that repayment, and therein lies the crime. That's the crux of the crime here, those 34 felony charges of falsifying business records. But Michael Cohen, as you said, is also problematic for the prosecution because he is, first of all, a convicted felon. He served jail time in part for this very crime that Donald Trump is being accused of. He's also pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. So you can imagine that the defense is going to argue to the jury, why should you believe anything Michael Cohen has to say? He is an admitted liar. And I think that's why we've seen the prosecution already trying to lay the foundation to this scheme with other witnesses like David Pecker, who is the publisher of the National Enquirer. And most importantly, these documents, you know, the checks that Trump signed and these ledgers and these records that have been entered as evidence. Because remember, Tom, that this crime is not having sex with a porn star. It's not about whether even this hush money payment was made. It's about falsifying these business records. And those charges could result in probation for Trump, jail time, or he could even be acquitted of these charges.
Okay, and just what have we been hearing then up until this point from Michael Cohen, the star witness?
So no cameras in court, so we're going on what reporters inside the courtroom have been relaying. Cohen has reaffirmed earlier testimony about this so-called catch-and-kill scheme that Trump had cooked up with the National Enquirer to basically buy stories from women who had negative things to say about them and then make sure those stories never would see the light of day. In fact, Cohen said that before Trump decided to run for president, he actually said to Cohen, I expect that many of these women will come forward with stories just like this. It's important that Cohen was saying that all of this was happening at Trump's direction. And here's a quote that sort of sums up the thrust of his testimony. Cohen said, what I was doing for the benefit of Mr. Trump, that personally I had no reason to own a story about an alleged an affair that Trump was having. Cohen also said that if Stormy Daniels' story had come out before the 2016 election, it would have had a catastrophic effect on the outcome, on the campaign. Trump's message to him was, quote, just take care of it. Also, I just want to add that there have been multiple reports that Donald Trump has been either sleeping in court today or that he's been slumped back in his chair with his eyes closed.
Well, he's probably quite tired, I'd have thought. Not too many good nights' sleep in the last few weeks. Any clues for Donald Trump's sake or for us covering the story, how much longer this is going to go on for?
Yeah, so court is in session just 3 days this week. That's because Wednesday's usually a day off, and then the judge canceled court on Friday so Trump could attend his son's high school graduation. That said, prosecutors say they're hoping to wrap up this case as early as this week. They plan to call one more witness after Michael Cohen. It will then be the defense's turn. The defense could decide to call witnesses. It could also decide to do nothing because the burden of proof, of course, is on the prosecution, and it's still an open question as to whether or not Donald Trump would take the stand in his own defense. There will be closing arguments and jury deliberations. It's just an educated guess, but I think probably at least 2 more weeks to go.
OK, well, let's see as well. I'll put that question to our next guest, who might be able to shed some extra light on that. Thank you very much in the meantime, Monte Francis from the news desk. Well, let's speak now to Philip Hackney, who's a professor of law at the University of Pittsburgh. Professor, just in your opinion, why is Michael Cohen such a key witness, and how pivotal do you think his testimony could possibly be?
Cohen's testimony is critical to this case. He is the only witness that connects Trump to the catch and kill scheme. He directly negotiated back and forth between David Pecker, the fellow who ran the National Enquirer and helped Trump essentially to acquire these stories. Cohen started out the day talking about how he was essentially Trump's right-hand man in a range of schemes over the years, starting with helping Trump get rid of limit invoices that he had to pay, and became a trusted advisor, essentially to accomplish things like this, schemes that maybe were underhanded in some way. And Cohen has been delivering the goods so far. We'll see what the what the defense does to him. But he has been key to connecting Trump to the falsification and to motive for wanting to not have these stories come out because of the campaign.
Yeah, but as we've been saying, he's a convicted felon, and obviously that does raise questions about his credibility. I mean, to what extent do you think that's going to be counting against the weight of what he's got to say?
You know, on this one, it goes either way, right? It will substantially undermine his truthfulness to the jury, but at the same time, he seems to be talking very directly and honestly to the jury. He served time for this very thing for Trump. He went to prison, got out a bit early as a result of COVID, but he served time as a result of this scheme. So he's the only one that has the direct knowledge of it. You don't go to court with the perfect case that you want. You have to take the folks that you have, and there's a real risk. I'm sure prosecutors would rather have a witness that had not served time for lying. And so it will undermine the case in part. I think were Jack Smith to make his case be able to go first, he would prefer it. A stronger case against Trump. There are 3 other cases out there. This was perhaps the weakest of the 4 that are going against President Trump right now. And having Michael Cohen be front and center is not ideal.
How likely do you think it's looking at this stage that Donald Trump is going to end up behind bars as a result of this particular case?
I think there's a good chance there's a conviction. Whether he serves time for this or not is way out of the question. It will not happen before the election. As a result of, even if he were convicted, there will be appeals, and that will take a long time. If he's just convicted of falsifying the records, that's a misdemeanor. He'll serve no jail time for that. He will have to be found to have falsified the records with the intent to avoid other crimes like campaign finance or tax charges. In that case, the judge could sentence him to jail for that, but it's not clear that that will happen. So I am not, I don't think there's a high percentage chance he serves jail time. Certainly won't happen before the election takes place.
I mean, it's a very unusual case. I mean, it's full of firsts. I mean, we had a porn star in the stand last week. We've got this disgruntled former lawyer, convicted felon with an intimate insider knowledge of Donald Trump's activities this week. I mean, I know this is slightly outside of your remit as a professor of law, but just how damaging is all of this, would you say, politically speaking, for Donald Trump and for his chances in November?
I think if anything is damaging, it's his appearing to sleep in the trial. I think all of this information is known. So it's not changing voters' minds regarding his ability to, the type of activity he engages in. We're getting a little bit more salacious details, so perhaps that breaks through on some modest aspects I think the biggest thing is how he comports himself in that courtroom. He was done a great favor to not have TVs in the courtroom. So my guess is this is relatively minor. The other cases being brought by Jack Smith would have been much more significant. So I think of the four that were out there, this was probably about the best one to go first.
And just lastly, I mean, any indications that you can offer us? We were just talking about this, my colleague and I, about how much longer this case is going to go on for.
Yeah, my sense is, as your colleague had said, there's quite a good chance it ends this week. President Trump has said he's going to testify. I really doubt that. The prosecution has the burden, and they probably don't want President Trump up there. So I think it could very well end this week or early next week. We've only got one more witness. Of course, they're going to take a little bit more time with Cohen, and then the prosecution's going to take quite a while. So I'd look for it to wrap up probably most likely next week.
OK, Professor Philip Hackney at the University of Pittsburgh, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Let's get a check of the top.